Okay, so in this video we're going to be going over all of the recent developments with the Dragon Files ARG. We'll be taking a look at what was in the VS folder and all of the interesting details about Pearl's backstory, discussing the 8 passwords and how they were solved, and then we'll be breaking down the newest Dragon Files teaser that confirms episode 3 is right around the corner. And I think that Dragon Files teaser, the one with the clapperboards that we'll take a look at soon, actually shows us a lot more than you might think. So honestly, I think you're going to want to stick around for that, and of course, there are timestamps in the description as always. But first of all, let's pick up where we left off with the password for the VS folder. We had been stuck on this step since the 27th of December, and to recap, through a collection of emails, we had been left with the letters ESTDEEARHSTT, but we had no idea what to do with them. We had assumed that this was an anagram, though considering the closest thing we had to an answer was Heat Street DS, many of us, including myself, assumed we had hit a dead end and this wasn't supposed to be an anagram. We spoke about this at length a couple of weeks ago and speculated as to whether or not this was a mistake, or it was supposed to be unsolvable, or if it was solvable and we just hadn't figured out how. And it turns out that yes, there had been a mistake in the clues given to us for this ARG, and so it was kind of unsolvable at the time. There was supposed to be an additional bold letter, R, included in one of the emails that simply wasn't there. Once we were told that we needed to factor in this additional letter, we soon wound up with the words hardest street. As I understand it, this was solved by CNM Rachel from the Payday community Discord server. And while I'm going to be discussing the solutions for each and every riddle in this video, I want to mention that Capcake and kossylvie, or kossylvie, I'm so sorry if I'm saying that wrong, I most definitely am, but the two of them have put together a fantastic document that covers each step of the development of this ARG, as well as crediting all of the individuals who contributed to each step. And of course, it goes without saying that that document will be linked in the description of this video. As much as I would have loved to have been part of solving this ARG myself, I mean, I was live for around 10 hours on the day the ARG began, we just didn't know it wasn't solvable at the time. I was actually quite unwell on the day that we were told we needed this additional letter to get past the first puzzle. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, if you can't tell by my voice, I am currently dying. And once we figured out what the first password was, I got out of bed to start streaming, and in the time it took me to get up and go live, the other 7 passwords had been solved. So I'll leave it up to you to decide how you feel about the complexity of this event. 7 additional passwords solved in about an hour? Is that a sign that the community working to solve this ARG is truly fantastic? Of course it is, but it also leads me to desire an increased complexity in these puzzles going forward. That said, how were these puzzles solved? Upon entering hardest street into the password field, we're given a riddle. Who's Marta's partner? To find the answer, we need to jump onto the Diamond District heist. After some subtle prompting in the right direction from the person behind this ARG, Sebastian, the conclusion was reached that hardest street referred to Diamond District. So, now that we're on the Diamond District heist, how do we find out who Marta's partner is? If you make your way over to this building in particular that is being leased out, we can see that Marta Brown and Brian Austin are listed as the 2 points of contact on this banner. So obviously the answer to this riddle is Brian Austin. Entering Brian Austin either with or without the space in between the 2 words, it doesn't actually matter here, you'll be prompted with a second riddle. When is the voice of reason? Heading into the International Diamond Enterprises store and taking a look at the newspaper on this desk here, we can see that the Sitwell Gazette refers to themselves as the voice of reason since 1897, giving us the answer to the next riddle. After this, we're prompted to follow the map left to right, firsts only. A rather obscure riddle, though easily solved. Still inside of the International Diamond Enterprises building, by heading upstairs and entering the jewellery workshop, you'll see this map on the wall. Looking at the IDE diamond mining locations at the bottom and taking the first letter from left to right, we'll be left with GGSLAI, the answer to our current riddle. To find the home of the Lux Noir, we'll need to cross the road and head into the small Ashton Fine branch, where we can find this advertisement for the Lux Noir itself. From this, it's clear that the home of this piece of jewellery is Ashton Fine, and it is as simple as that. Ashton Fine is the answer to this riddle. Next up, a denizen Denizen of the Hells in faded red, a simple reference to this pinky demon sign on the heist and giving us the password Pinky Demon. This is where the ARG moves away from the Diamond District heist again, as shortly after inputting the 6th password, we'll receive an order confirmation via an email from Morse Family Guns and Ammo. This is by far my favourite riddle to solve, so let's break it down. This email has come from Morse Family Guns and Ammo, and immediately the name Morse should stand out to anybody familiar with ARGs as an indication that we're working with Morse code. But scrolling through the email, there aren't any dots or dashes for us to solve, just a list of ammunition. Well, this is where kossylvie, again apologies if I'm getting that wrong, brilliantly suggested substituting the 9mm rounds for dots and the 5.8 by 42mm rounds for dashes, which leaves us with the following Morse code that translates into lots of ammo that just so happens to be our final answer. I adore the idea of being sent around a heist looking for answers to riddles, kind of like a treasure hunt. Of course, it would have been nice to have seen us had to go onto other heists other than just Diamond District, but that said, this is the first time we've seen something like this in Payday 3, and for a first attempt, it's done well. And I hope we see more of this in the future, especially when it comes to the next 2 encrypted folders, because once you unlock the VS folder, the second folder begins to decrypt, although this time there isn't a countdown. By far, my favourite step of this collection of riddles is the last one. I love the misdirection that's thrown at us by requiring the substitution of the 2 ammo types for dots and dashes. I really think that's brilliant and a great way to mix things up after 5 back-to-back riddles where the answer can just be found on the Diamond District heist. But anyway, let's waste no more time and jump straight into the VS folder itself. This folder contains 5 pages that create 2 documents. The first, a Child Protective Service report about Violet Spencer, and the second, an NYPD homicide report about the death of Morris Parker. Let's take a look at the CPS report first. This is a case on Violet Spencer, a 14-year-old girl. This case came around when neighbours reported a domestic disturbance at home, and when the police went to investigate, they were met by her heavily intoxicated father, and after assessing the living conditions, as well as seeing that Violet was visibly upset and dishevelled, the police determined that the environment was unsafe and contacted CPS for further assessment. Throughout this report, we learn that Violet Spencer is in the sole custody of her father and doesn't really have any other family. Her mother passed away when she was 12, and her father is unemployed and a serious alcoholic. It seems like the family used to live in a much nicer area on Pearl Street, but after the death of the mother, the father was made redundant from his job as an engineer, and without means to pay for outstanding medical bills, the family relocated to a low-rent housing project in Hunts Point. As this rather depressing document continues, we learn about her troubled relationship with her father and difficult home life, as well as that at school, she was given the nickname Pearl. We also learned that while her grades weren't great, that wasn't because she wasn't smart. In fact, her teachers agreed that she demonstrates a high degree of intelligence, and while not exactly a great sign, she's an expert social manipulator and has a talent for forgery. So clearly we're not dealing with an idiot here. Pearl is a smart cookie. Moving on to the homicide report, it details an interesting scene where the back door of Morris Parker's property was professionally picked, and Morris Parker was shot with a single gunshot wound to the head, which entered through the nasal cavity and exited through the base of the neck, indicating the victim was on his knees, making the shooting seem like an execution-style killing. The victim had a criminal history with many different gangs and criminal organizations. However, one of his affiliated crews had recently been wiped out by unknown assailants. The only member of that group still alive was Violet Spencer, who we now know as Pearl. Pearl and Morris Parker, who also went by the name Tank, were known as associates. From this, we can deduce that Pearl had reason to suspect that Tank was involved in the assassination of her crew, and as such, she tracked him down and took him out. She discusses the death of her crew with Dallas, Hoxton, and Chains during one of the Payday 3 cutscenes.
Ran a crew there for a while.
Not still a thing?
No. We were betrayed. Whole team wiped out overnight.
Sounds familiar.
So, all in all, the VS folder is about Violet Spencer, Pearl. I still find it quite interesting that this folder in particular had been placed on the server titled The Secret. Surely, if this is a folder Dragan has about a particular heister, it would make sense for it to go in the Documents folder with his files on other heisters, just like the folder on Houston and Clover and Prospect 3. I know Pearl isn't exactly a prospect, she's currently an active member, but that doesn't mean Dragan would necessarily take the safety of her documentation any less seriously. So perhaps there's more to this information about Pearl than it might seem. After all, she is an entirely new character introduced with Payday 3, so hopefully will be important to the narrative of this game going forward. But then again, it's also very likely that I'm just reading too far into this, and the only reason it's in the secret folder is because we're solving this now and it's unrelated to either of the prospects. But I guess only time will tell. For now, I think the more important question to be asking is which folder is going to be the next one to open on the Dragon Files. Because currently, while we're waiting for the second folder in the secret server to be decrypted, we're also waiting for the reveal of Prospect 3. Regardless, we're clearly not going to have to wait too long for more Dragon Files information, as on Friday, we received this teaser.
First room, shot 1, take 1. First room, shot 1, take 2. Take 3.
It's a series of takes being marked with a clapperboard for the next episode of the Dragon Files. I am so excited to know that there's another live-action Dragon Files episode seemingly right around the corner, and interestingly, this short is titled What Dragon Found Will Change Everything. And that just fills me with so many questions that I want answered, as does this teaser itself. Because although we're only shown the clapperboard, that doesn't mean we can't look at some of the shots we're shown as well. Immediately, having gone through all of these clapperboards, yes, I have gone frame by frame, we can see that there are going to be 3 rooms. Of course, that's assuming that we've been shown at least one clapperboard from each scene of this next episode, because we can see that there's markings for first room, second room, and third room. Given some of the things we see in the shots for the third room, I don't think there is going to be a fourth room. I think 3 is a pretty safe bet. And just for any of you who might be curious out there, the highest I saw the shot count go was 10 in the second room. So we know that there were at least 10 shots filmed for the second room. But again, that's assuming that we've seen the clapperboard for every shot. With those little technicalities out of the way, can we figure out how this episode is going to play out from this teaser alone? You know, it may be a bit of a long shot, but I think we can. Given that episode 1 of the Dragon File sets up the addition of Clover, and episode 2 sets up the addition of Houston, I think it would make sense for episode 3 to set up the addition of the next Heister. And given that we're all kind of running with the assumption that the next Heister is going to be Jacket, especially with all of the teasers that we've received over the last few months, let's approach this teaser with that in mind. I'll also be going with the assumption that the first, second, and third rooms that we see referenced on the clapperboard are all of the locations for episode 3, and that there isn't another location that we haven't been shown. So with all of that in mind, and looking a bit at what we see in the background, here's how I think episode 3 will play out. We'll be following 2 armed men. Let's say they're police officers or bounty hunters of some sort, and they're looking for someone. The same someone who was responsible for the bloody scenes we saw at the end of the last Dragon Files episode. Judging from the scenery, I don't think that this episode will take place in Dragon's hideout. So these people are elsewhere. We'll follow these men into the second room where they begin to discuss the person they're looking to find. And then maybe the lights go out. I say this because we can see some of the clapperboard shots are noticeably darker than others, and in some of the shots the clapperboard itself is lit with a phone camera. Eventually, these men make their way into the final room where they're faced with an ominous tape recorder sitting in the middle of a desk. "Play me," written on a piece of paper taped to the top of the recorder. They debate for a moment about whether or not they should do what the note says, and eventually one of them does. And upon playing the recording, they hear this.
Do you know what time it is?
And then we cut to black, or perhaps hear the tapping of a baseball bat before the video ends, as that was something that always really stood out to me from the Hotline Miami DLC trailer. Or maybe even we see the Chicken Man himself brandishing a hammer in reference to his initial reveal from Payday 2. No matter how this plays out, if that tape recorder plays a line from Jacket, there will be goosebumps all around. Of course, absolutely none of that is confirmed at all, so please take it with a comically large spoonful of salt, and feel free to let me know how you think episode 3 of the Dragon Files might play out given everything we can see from this recent teaser in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, consider clicking that subscribe button. That is just about everything that we have to discuss here today. I think we definitely saved the best part of the video till last, but if you are still curious about the steps preceding everything we spoke about today in regards to the Dragon Files ARG website, you can click through to the playlist on screen now to learn more about this ARG from the very beginning. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.